Your soulmate opened up to their mother about you, and shockingly, she shouted, "You are my beloved child." There is a conversation you were never supposed to hear. It happened behind a closed door, in the quiet of an ordinary evening, when your soulmate finally gathered the courage to tell their mother everything about you. Every hidden feeling. Every unanswered question. Every reason they could no longer pretend you meant nothing. For a long moment, she listened without saying a word. Then her expression suddenly changed. She stood up so quickly that even your soulmate froze. Her voice echoed through the room as she shouted, "You are," but before she finished the sentence, something unexpected interrupted the moment. That unfinished statement has been lingering ever since, and what it truly meant could change everything you thought you knew. Don't skip. The answer is closer than you think, but it isn't what anyone expected. Your soulmate had imagined that conversation 100 different ways, yet none of those imagined endings prepared them for what actually unfolded. Their mother began asking questions no one else had ever dared to ask. When did you first realize this person was different? Why do you still think about them even after everything that happened? What makes them impossible to replace? Each answer only made the silence heavier. Instead of criticizing your soulmate, she seemed to be searching for something hidden between every word. Then she quietly admitted that she had noticed changes long before this conversation ever happened. The restless nights. The distracted smiles. The sudden moments of hope that appeared for no obvious reason. Stay till the end, because what she connected next made your soulmate question whether your paths had been crossing in ways neither of you had recognized. As the conversation continued, your soulmate finally confessed the one secret they had been protecting for far too long. They admitted they had almost walked away from you, not because they stopped caring, but because they were terrified they would never be enough. Their mother closed her eyes for a moment as though an old memory had suddenly returned. When she looked back at them, her face carried both disbelief and certainty. She took a slow breath, pointed toward your soulmate, and began repeating the same unfinished words with even greater emotion. "You are," this time her voice trembled, as though she had uncovered a truth that had been hidden in plain sight for years. But before she could reveal the final words, someone unexpected knocked at the door, and the person standing outside knew a secret about you that neither of them had ever heard before. The knock at the door didn't feel ordinary. It arrived at the exact moment the unfinished sentence was about to become the truth your soulmate had been searching for. Their mother hesitated before opening it, almost as if she already knew who was waiting outside. Standing there was someone she hadn't spoken to in years, carrying an expression that mixed urgency with regret. Without greeting anyone, the visitor quietly said, "I came because I couldn't keep this hidden anymore." Your soulmate's heart started racing. Hidden from whom? Hidden for how long? The visitor slowly stepped inside, looked directly at your soulmate, and whispered, "Everything you believe about this person is only half the story. Something huge is waiting for you, because the next few minutes would completely change the direction of the conversation." The room became painfully silent. The visitor reached into a worn envelope and carefully placed an old photograph on the table. At first glance, it seemed meaningless. But then your soulmate noticed one tiny detail that instantly stole their attention. You were connected to a moment from years ago in a way no one had ever mentioned. Their mother stared at the picture with wide eyes before covering her mouth in disbelief. "So that's why," she murmured under her breath. Suddenly, everything she had been trying to say earlier began making sense. She hadn't shouted out of anger. She had reacted because she recognized something extraordinary that your soulmate had completely overlooked. But what exactly had she seen that no one else could? Stay with this story, because the answer is closer than ever. Your soulmate finally found the courage to ask the question that had been haunting them all evening. "Tell me the truth. What were you trying to say before the knock interrupted you?" Their mother slowly stood, picked up the photograph, and held it tightly against her chest. Tears gathered in her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of realization. She looked directly at your soulmate and softly repeated those same unfinished words once more. "You are." Then she revealed only the beginning of the sentence before stopping herself again. "You are chasing the one person who was never meant to be forgotten." The room fell silent. Before anyone could respond, the visitor quietly added, "If you think that's surprising, wait until you hear what happened the last time your paths crossed without either of you realizing it." The visitor's final words refused to leave the room. Your soulmate searched every memory they had, replaying old conversations, forgotten places, and moments that once seemed too ordinary to matter. Suddenly, one memory refused to stay buried. It was a brief encounter that lasted only seconds, yet something about your eyes had stayed with them ever since. At the time, they couldn't explain why they felt so strangely connected to someone they barely knew. Now, that forgotten moment carried a completely different meaning. Their mother quietly nodded before saying, "Some people leave footprints on your heart long before they ever become part of your life." Your soulmate's breathing grew heavier. Could it really be true that this story had begun much earlier than either of you realized? Don't look away now, because another hidden piece was about to fall into place. The visitor slowly unfolded a handwritten note that had been tucked inside the old envelope for years. It wasn't addressed to your soulmate. It wasn't even signed. Yet every line described the kind of person you had become with unsettling accuracy. It spoke about quiet strength, kindness that often went unnoticed, and a habit of carrying burdens without asking anyone for help. Your soulmate read each sentence in stunned silence, wondering how someone could have known these things so long ago. Their mother gently smiled through her tears and admitted she had sensed the same qualities from the very first time your name was mentioned. "That is why I reacted the way I did," she confessed. "Not because I was afraid of this connection, but because I realized it was far more meaningful than either of you understood. Stay till the end, because one final discovery would make this confession impossible to ignore." Your soulmate leaned back, overwhelmed by everything they had just learned, believing the biggest surprise was finally over. But the visitor quietly shook their head. "There's one more truth," they said. "The reason I came tonight wasn't just to reveal the photograph or the letter." They reached into their coat one last time and placed a small sealed envelope on the table. Across the front, in faded handwriting, were words that froze everyone in place. "Open only when they are finally ready to know the truth about the one they cannot stop thinking about." No one in the room recognized the handwriting, yet everyone felt its weight. Your soulmate looked at their mother, who slowly whispered, if what's inside matches what I've suspected all along, then everything after tonight will change forever." The envelope remained unopened, and what it contained was even more personal than anyone was prepared to face. No one reached for the envelope. Not because they didn't want the truth, but because they feared how completely it might reshape everything they believed. Your soulmate's hands trembled as they stared at the faded handwriting, wondering who could have written a message that seemed to know this exact moment would one day arrive. Their mother finally broke the silence. "Some truths don't come into your life when you ask for them," she said softly. "They arrive when your heart is finally ready to carry them." The visitor nodded in quiet agreement before carefully placing the envelope into your soulmate's hands. "Once this seal is broken," they warned, "there is no returning to the story you believed before tonight. Something huge is waiting for you, because the first line inside that envelope would leave everyone speechless." Your soulmate slowly opened it, unfolding a single sheet of paper that had yellowed with time. The message didn't begin with a name. Instead, it asked one haunting question: have you finally stopped running from the person who makes your heart feel at home? Your soulmate froze. Every word that followed seemed to describe emotions they had hidden from everyone, even from themselves. It spoke about missed opportunities, silent sacrifices, and two lives that kept drifting apart only to be pulled together again by unexpected moments. Their mother watched each expression change across your soulmate's face before quietly whispering, "Now you understand why I couldn't finish my sentence." She wasn't shocked because of who you were. She was overwhelmed by how deeply your presence had already changed someone she loved. The final lines of the letter were unlike anything they expected. It didn't predict the future or promise a perfect ending. Instead, it offered a simple challenge. When fear finally loses its voice, choose honesty before another opportunity slips away. Your soulmate lowered the paper, tears quietly filling their eyes as they realized how many feelings had gone unspoken for far too long. Just as they looked toward the visitor to ask who had written it, the visitor gave a faint smile and revealed one last surprise. "The author left one instruction for me," they said. "If this letter was ever opened, I was to tell you that the person at the center of this story has already sensed a change, even if they don't yet know why." Your soulmate's heart skipped a beat, because for the first time, they believed that the next chapter of this story might not begin with another secret, but with a conversation that could change everything. Your soulmate couldn't stop thinking about those final words. If you had already sensed a change, what did that really mean? Had there been a quiet moment recently when you paused for no reason, felt someone's presence without seeing them, or remembered a memory that seemed to appear out of nowhere? Those questions echoed through their mind long after the visitor had fallen silent. Their mother gently placed a hand on their shoulder and said, "You have spent so much time waiting for certainty that you almost missed what your heart has been trying to tell you all along." For the first time that night, your soulmate stopped searching for perfect answers and began paying attention to the feelings they had been trying so hard to ignore. But just as peace started settling over the room, the visitor looked toward the window and quietly said, "There's still one piece of this story that none of you have uncovered." Everyone turned in the same direction. Outside, nothing seemed unusual, yet the visitor's expression remained serious. They reached into their pocket and revealed a small folded note they had almost forgotten to deliver. "This wasn't inside the envelope," they explained. "It was hidden beneath it." Your soulmate carefully unfolded the paper and found only one short sentence written across the center: "The next step belongs to the one who is brave enough to speak first." No names. No dates. Just those powerful words. Their mother smiled through quiet tears because she finally understood why the earlier message had remained unfinished. She hadn't been trying to warn your soulmate away from you. She had been hoping they would stop hiding behind fear before another opportunity quietly disappeared. Stay till the end, because the visitor had one final confession that changed everything they thought they knew. The visitor took a deep breath before revealing the truth they had carried for years. "I wasn't sent here by chance," they admitted. "I promised long ago that if the day ever came when both hearts were ready, I would make sure the silence finally ended." Your soulmate stood there, overwhelmed by the realization that this night had never been about coincidence. Every photograph, every letter, every unfinished sentence had been leading to one simple decision: whether to keep living with unanswered feelings or finally let the truth be spoken. As they looked down at the note one last time, their phones suddenly lit up with a new notification. The screen showed no name. Only a single message that read, "I think it's finally time we stop wondering what could have been." Your soulmate's heart nearly stopped, because deep inside, they already knew exactly who had sent it, and what those words could mean next. The room fell completely silent as your soulmate stared at the glowing screen. There was still no name attached to the message, yet somehow it felt unmistakably familiar. They read it once. Then again. Every time, the words seemed to carry even more meaning. Their mother slowly smiled, not because she knew who had sent it, but because she recognized something she hadn't seen in a very long time: hope replacing fear. "Do you notice the difference?" she asked quietly. "For the first time tonight, you're not asking whether this connection is real. You're only wondering what happens next." That single realization changed everything. The questions that had haunted your soulmate for so long were no longer about doubt. They were about courage. Without saying another word, your soulmate stepped outside, hoping the cool night air would clear their thoughts. Instead, it brought back another memory they had never fully understood. It was the last meaningful interaction they had connected to you, a conversation that ended too soon, a smile that lingered longer than expected, and one sentence you had spoken almost casually. At the time, it sounded ordinary. Tonight, it echoed differently. It suddenly felt like a message they had been too afraid to hear. Their mother quietly joined them and whispered, "Sometimes the heart understands long before the mind is willing to believe." She then revealed one final detail she had kept to herself all evening. "The reason I reacted so strongly wasn't only because of what your soulmate told me. It was because the first time I heard your name, I saw a peace in their eyes that I had never seen before. Something huge is waiting for you, because that hidden truth unlocked a decision no one could postpone any longer." Your soulmate looked back at the mysterious message and finally realized waiting had accomplished nothing except creating more distance. They took a slow breath, closed their eyes for just a moment, and made a promise to themselves that fear would no longer decide the future. The visitor watched quietly before giving one final nod of approval. "That's all this night was ever meant to do," they said. "Not force an ending, but give you the courage to begin." Just as your soulmate reached for their phone, ready to answer the message that had changed everything, another notification appeared beneath the first. This one contained only 6 simple words: "There's one truth I never told you." Your soulmate's heartbeat quickened all over again, because they knew the next message wouldn't just reveal another secret, it would finally expose the feeling that had been hidden between both of you from the very beginning. 1,000 possibilities raced through your soulmate's mind, yet none of them prepared them for what came next. They opened the new message with trembling hands, expecting another mystery, another clue, another unanswered question. Instead, they found a single sentence that seemed almost too simple after everything that had happened: "I stopped speaking because I was afraid the truth would push you away, not because I stopped caring." Your soulmate read those words over and over, feeling every wall they had built around their heart begin to crack. Their mother quietly watched from a distance before whispering, "There it is, the fear that has been standing between two hearts all this time." For the first time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like the moment before something life-changing was finally about to begin. Stay till the end, because the next decision could alter both of your futures. The visitor stepped forward one last time and gently asked, "If you had one chance to say everything you've been hiding, would you still let fear choose your words?" That question settled deeply into your soulmate's heart. They realized they had spent so much time waiting for the perfect moment that they had nearly missed the right one. Every memory from the past suddenly carried a different meaning. The missed conversations, the unfinished smiles, the moments when both of you seemed ready to speak but neither of you took the first step. Their mother smiled through quiet tears and finally completed the sentence that had remained unfinished since the beginning of the night. Looking directly into your soulmate's eyes, she said, "You are already carrying the kind of love that deserves honesty, not silence." Those were the words she had tried to say before everything was interrupted, and hearing them now lifted a burden your soulmate had carried for far too long. Your soulmate slowly unlocked the phone and began typing, not a perfect message, but an honest one. There were no rehearsed lines, no dramatic promises, only the truth they had hidden for so long. Just before pressing send, the screen suddenly lit up again with one final incoming message. It arrived at the exact same second. Neither of you knew the other was reaching out, yet both messages appeared almost simultaneously, as if the distance between your hearts had quietly disappeared. Your soulmate smiled in disbelief, while their mother closed her eyes with a peaceful expression, knowing this was the moment she had hoped for from the very beginning. But when your soulmate opened that final message, the very first words made them stop breathing for a moment. "Before we move forward, there's something about my past you deserve to know." The smile on your soulmate's face slowly faded as those words settled in. "There's something about my past you deserve to know." They weren't frightening words. They were honest ones. And somehow, honesty felt more powerful than any mystery that had come before. Instead of opening the message immediately, your soulmate took a long breath. Their mother noticed the hesitation and gently said, "The strongest relationships aren't built on perfect histories. They're built on people who are brave enough to tell the truth." Those words gave your soulmate the courage to keep reading. The message continued with a heartfelt confession about old mistakes, difficult lessons, and moments of regret that had shaped the person standing here today. There were no excuses, no attempts to hide behind the past, only a sincere hope that the truth would be accepted before the future began. "Don't skip, because the final lines of the message carried a surprise no one expected. As your soulmate reached the end, tears quietly filled their eyes. The confession wasn't about losing love. It was about finally becoming worthy of it. The message ended with a question that seemed simple, yet carried the weight of everything that had happened. If you know every imperfect chapter of my story, would you still choose to walk beside me? The room became silent once again. Their mother smiled softly, not because every answer had been found, but because the biggest barrier had finally disappeared. There were no more hidden letters, no more interrupted sentences, and no more secret standing between two hearts. The visitor quietly stepped toward the door, knowing their purpose had been fulfilled. Before leaving, they turned back with one last gentle reminder. Real connections don't survive because nothing ever goes wrong. They survive because two people decide the truth is more valuable than fear. Your soulmate looked at the phone one final time before pressing send on the message they had been writing all night. There was no dramatic speech, only honesty, gratitude, and the courage to stop wondering what might have been. A few moments later, the reply appeared almost instantly. It contained just one sentence, yet it answered every question that had echoed through this unforgettable night. I've been waiting for the day we'd finally stop hiding from each other. Your soulmate closed their eyes, smiled through happy tears, and realized the journey had never been about discovering a perfect person. It had always been about finding someone willing to choose honesty over silence, hope over doubt, and a shared future over unanswered questions. And at that very moment, a new chapter quietly began. Not because fate forced it, but because two hearts finally found the courage to tell each other the truth.